Muscle car wars were all about bigger is better, and biggest is best. But over half of the Saturday night cruising was done under small block power. Here it is, the big playground. This is where the muscle car games were played. This is where reputations were made and cars became legends. Out here, performance talked and everything else walked. During the muscle years, Detroit's car makers were going all out to make next year's cars faster than this year's. And in the pre-emissions, cheap gas world of the 60s, most of the time they got that done by simply stuffing in a bigger engine.
You gotta love the big blocks. The big blocks have the thump and the thunder, and it's so easy to make a cloud of smoke with the big block engine. It makes anybody look good. You're an instant boulevard hero with the big block engine.
But mixed in with all those big-inch ground pounders was a slew of high-winding, super-performing little engines that on any day of the week could put many of those mountain motors on the trailer. Even though the big block cars were the ones you saw on all the magazine covers, it's a fact that about 70% of the cars we all cruised in and took down the quarter mile were powered by engines no larger than 350 cubic inches. Anyone who was there during the glory years knows that it was those short-stroke screamers, like the 327s, 340s, and 289s, that did most of the heavy hauling.
Small blocks were affordable, small blocks were drivable, small blocks were more practical to live with, and when it came right down to it, a lot of guys were opting for the small block over the big block.
Most people didn't buy small block muscle cars for their luxury or power options. Most people bought small block cars because they were affordable. Cars like the Z28 Camaro, the K-Code Mustang, and the 346 Pack Cuda were lighter, quicker, and could pull revs out the yin-yang. And in a very nice side benefit, the smaller engine cars didn't send any warning signals to your insurance carrier.
Insurance was a killer. If you were able to scrape enough money together to go into the showroom and buy your first muscle car, you were in for a rude awakening when you sat down with your insurance man, because it was not uncommon for your insurance premiums to equal or exceed the amount that you were paying on your car payments.
So here's our tribute to the cars most of us own, the small block screamers. We'll get this thing rolling when we come back on the American Muscle Car. Make no mistake, General Motors is huge. So big, in fact, that during the muscle car years, each division, Cadillac, Pontiac, Buick, Olds, and Chevrolet, each had their own engine designs. Some of the GM divisions, Chevrolet in particular, had 2 or 3 different sized block castings, which led to the small block and big block designations. Pontiac, however, was not so blessed. Pontiac's first modern V8 was created in 1955. It weighed in at 287 cubic inches. And for the next 22 years, all Pontiac V8s used the same basic block casting. Through the years, Pontiac bored and stroked this same basic block to make 11 different engines, from 278 to 455 cubic inches.
The classic big block and small block terms did not apply to Pontiac. Pontiac had a one-size-fits-all block, and they were able to adjust the displacement up and down using just the one block. So they could stretch it from the small engines of the 50s up through 326, 389, and then into the 455s.
By now, everyone knew how potent Pontiac's big engines were. But coming in under most people's radar was a smaller Pontiac engine that could really make some power. Pontiac called it the 350 HO. This engine used the 400's crankshaft, a 3.876-inch bore, and the 10.5 compression Ram Air 3 cylinder heads. The HO also used a lighter, stronger valve train, the high output oil pump from the 400, and a Rochester Quadrajet 4-barrel carb. This was basically a little Ram Air 3 engine, and it cranked out 330 horsepower at 5,500 RPM. Without the GTO's heavy Endura front bumper and its posh interior, the 350HO was a low 14-second performer in both the Le Mans and the Firebird, at 3/4 the cost of a GTO.
350HO, in my estimation, is one of the unsung heroes of the small block engine families.
In 1964, Olds was the only car maker besides Pontiac to offer the world a genuine muscle car, the 442. Like the name implied, it came with a 4-speed transmission, 4-barrel carburetor, and dual exhausts. The 64 442 was built around a nice little 330 cubic inch power plant. But by 1965, Olds felt the need to run with the big dogs, so they built a new 400 cubic inch engine for the 442. And those extra 70 cubes made a big difference.
442 was one of the original muscle cars, and it was a total package. It had the style, it had the substance, it had the marketing sizzle, and on the street it really delivered the full punch.
But as nice as the big motor 442 was, the designers at Olds never forgot how much fun it was to beat up on bigger cars with a smaller engine. So in 1968, they created one of the muscle era's most potent little cars, the Ramrod.
It's based off a small block number 1, which is a very short stroke engine and all that. It's only a 3.37 inch stroke, so it's very high revving. It does have a big bore and all that. It's 457, and also it's very much over square, and they just love to rev high.
The 350 cubic inch Ramrod was a true masterpiece. Called the W31 option, it was carefully assembled from hand-selected parts. Each motor was a blueprinted high-performance piece, right from the factory.
What they did was a select fit on all the parts. So basically there was a standing order out from the engineering department that said, if you ever get a dead nuts perfect part, we want it. The W31 option and all only ran for 3 years, 68, 69, and 70 and all, and they canceled it in 1971 when the high compression went away.
Olds only turned out 500 of these little jewels in 1968, so you're excused if you've never seen a Ramrod before. If you've ever come up against one, though, you'd probably remember it, at least from this angle.
Currently, it runs about 13.8, 13.9 seconds and a quarter mile at about 98, 99 miles an hour. It has run a 13.30 at 105.
The Olds and Pontiac 350s were proof that you didn't need a mega-inch engine to be a terror on the street and the strip. A good running small block would get the job done any day.
I've been matched against 446 packs, and 429 Torinos, a couple of Olds 455s which we beat, which that was kind of fun, and also, but it's not faster, but it's quicker.
We'll be right back for more small block fun and games when the American muscle car returns. Little miracle motors like the Olds W31 come along once in a generation, but some engines span several generations. And when it comes to spanning generations, Ford Motor Company has no equal. Since the late 50s, among the big three, Ford had been the go big or stay home engine builder. The 352, the 390, and the mighty 427 were icons of big Detroit iron. But in 1962, Ford introduced a lightweight, thin-wall V8 that would become one of the world's favorite high-performance power plants.
The engine was started as a 221 cubic inch V8, had a very small bore, very small stroke, and that happened to be the exact cubic inch displacement of the first Ford V8, which was the flathead in 32. And the engine was designed and developed for the Fairlane. It was the smallest domestic V8 even to today. It's one of the very smallest dimensionally, length and width, and even the weight. It was first in the Fairlanes, and then it progressed to the Falcons, and then finally to the Mustang.
By 1965, this little engine had grown to 289 cubic inches, and Ford had poured enough go-fast into it to make it a serious rev monster. With a huge bore of 4 inches and a short 2.87-inch stroke, the 289 took the engineering term over-square to the max. It didn't make terrific torque, but the hypo version of this engine, called the